Hello, everybody. You are listening to Judging Meghan with your host, Meghan Judge. You can kind of see me if you go to YouTube. P.S. My guest looks gorgeous. Me, no makeup as usual, but whatever. I like to kind of keep it real. I'm usually in a rush while I'm getting ready to record these podcasts. It was the holidays. I have been off from recording for a few weeks, hoping I'm not too rusty, but I do have to talk to you about something. My passionate love affair with football and TCU is now it's on fuego. My nephew will be playing in the college championships. I already told my guest about it, who lives in Texas and probably is mortified by my passionate love for TCU football. They will be playing here in Los Angeles at SoFi Stadium by the time this comes out. I'm hoping that they will be the college champions of all college football and beat Georgia, but we don't know. You will be listening to this in February. I do want to tell you I'm like a month out from recording, but there's a couple of things I do want to say. My chapter in my book, Her Badass Story, will be out by the time you listen to this. So I will be posting stuff about that on my Instagram and my website and links to be able to purchase it. I'm also starting my own book. I'm also going to be starting my speaking engagements in the new year. So there's pretty cool things going on for your friend, Meghan Judge. We've all been put here for a reason, and we all deserve acceptance.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.
I'm a trauma survivor from a really young age, and I have been diagnosed with complex PTSD in the past few years. I've been surrounded by death and abuse much of my life. I've been dragged through the mud and have been to the point of not wanting to go on anymore. Through my interviews with other survivors, I've learned that there is a way out. From recovering to surviving and thriving, we all have the strength to come out the other side.
You are listening to Judging Meghan.
I do want to introduce my guest, Elaine Mingus. I found her actually through, I think, like a message board or something like that. It's always interesting how I find my guests. And I immediately knew from her story that she had briefly posted that I needed to have her on. Elaine is a former heroin addict. She's a recovered bulimic. She is the mother of 7 children. And she is also a speaker, and she's running for Mrs. Texas. Not impressive at all. Elaine, welcome to Judging Meghan. It's so nice to meet you.
Thank you so much for having me. And yes, absolutely mortified. I absolutely am joking because I know nothing about football. Like I said before, I am a Friday Night Lights girl, but I only went to the football game for the after party. So
yeah, the after party.
That's about as all as I know.
Yeah, the after party and the cheerleaders. But now the problem is I think my sister's mortified for me to even come to the game because I know all the players' names. I feel like I think I know the rules of football, but my husband's like, you still don't understand. Sit down and shut up. I go insane during the games. And it's a whole exciting new world for me, not to mention the fact that I do need to tell you, my nephew is one of the best kids, and he fought so hard to be able to be in the position that he's in. And he's a perfect example of somebody that what I talk about all the time is to keep going and follow your dreams and never give up. And he is a perfect example of somebody that did just that. So I'm even more proud of him for that. Elaine, let's talk a little bit about you and where you're from. Tell me a little bit about your childhood. I know you're from Texas, but I want to hear more about your growing up.
So I grew up in a fairly well-to-do family, kind of didn't want for anything. We lived in the Houston area until I was about 10 years old. And then at that point, my dad, who worked in Houston and continued to work in Houston, wanted to move us out of the school district that we were in because it was known for its high drug use. And he was just like, this is not something I want, my almost teenage girls walking into. So he moved us to this small Texas town that had a Winn-Dixie. And I think finally when we got a Walmart, it was like the thing. So, we didn't really have a lot to do. So it's funny because my story ends up as I'm a heroin addict. So the very thing that he feared and was trying to keep me from, it still found its way into my heart and life.
That is, I think that's something that obviously you know what's going on in our country and the statistics of heroin addiction. But it's crazy to me that that's not, well, I also have younger kids, but it's not even, it's very, I think I'm very Pollyanna about thinking about that stuff. Um, just being in the outskirts of Los Angeles. That is so scary that your dad had to think about that. Like that must have been very, it must have been all over the place in Houston. And I never even knew that. Is that true?
Yeah, I mean, there was definitely different districts, and
Uh,
some were, the Fifth Ward, which is, a little darker in and the drug use, and scary place you wouldn't want to go after certain dark. But then you also had the like ultra rich elite people who were into cocaine and the
mhm.
more expensive drugs that you just was still really really dangerous and in a whole different way, but basically in the same way too.
Well, it's scary. I mean, I've done episodes about the fentanyl crisis and how scary it is. And then I am aware of, we live in Los Angeles, it's near a port. It doesn't matter what your socioeconomic income is. If drugs are going to
No.
find you, they're going to find you, right?
Yeah, yeah. And there's just certain personalities I think that tend to want to walk on the edge and find and look for things that are fun, and they're constantly looking for that next dopamine rush, and they're willing to do crazy things to find it.
So tell me about like growing up. Once you moved, you were in a really small town. Were you happy? Did you have a good childhood? It sounds like your parents were involved. Tell me a little bit about that.
So my mom was very involved in my childhood. She was a PTA mom, would bring me lunch when I was wanting like special diet food, baked potatoes, because, when you go to lunch, it's just like, chips and cinnamon rolls. And she was just, bent over backwards to do anything for us. And when I was growing up, she was kind of known as the mom that would, we could all go to the house and hang out, and she would bring out the cheese and crackers type of thing. So she was very involved. My dad was a great dad in the sense that he was available and he made money for the family, but he also kind of tended towards being a workaholic and a little bit of an alcoholic, had a little bit of a problem there. And it didn't look like the typical alcoholism that you see on TV. It was more like he would not drink, and then for a couple days he would drink really really hard and then not drink. And so he was like this really high functioning person that just was able to complete a lot, but then really just when he got overwhelmed, he just would fall into that place where just, and I've been there myself as an adult, where you're just like, I'm pushing 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 pushing, and then I break. And so I think that I very much take after his personality. And so, as a child, I kind of, I was always looking for his attention because he was always so involved with work, and he gave me attention. But with a kid, and I have 7 kids myself, it's really never enough. And, so you have your kid brain that doesn't understand and your adult brain that totally understands. And then they come together at some point, and you're like having to, clean up the mess of like, yes, I understood, but I was a kid. And so, there's some times that I think with my dad, he just was not as present as I would like. And I think that's where, when we were in the small town, we went to a small town church. And one of the ways that the guy who and the youth pastor at the church I was attending was able to get an in was by talking to me and asking me questions about, oh, so how about your dad? Like, oh, poor you. He's not talking to you. He's not paying attention to you. And he kind of just groomed me that way, where I felt like, oh, someone's paying attention to me. That's a male figure. And he was able to kind of sink his claws into me. And do what he wanted. And I was really, really, really young, and he was way old enough to know better. And so that kind of took, that was around 11. And that took that, so it was probably like 2 years after we moved to the small town. And then that took me down a deep, dark path where I became bulimic. I got into drugs, was promiscuous and all those things that, my dad wanted to save me from.
So that makes sense that that was the trigger that kind of started the whole cycle of addiction. And I myself am a recovered bulimic. I talk about it. It when you are abused or have been through abuse, it's very common, to want to turn and find some kind of band-aid that sadly is not going to really work in the long run, right? Tell me,
Yeah,
so tell me about like what initially, like what was your experience with going down the rabbit hole of finding heroin? Or am I skipping ahead too far?
Uh, yeah, I mean, there's probably a little bit in between that I could let you know.
Go ahead.
So, my situation where I was groomed by an adult and was eventually found out. And so my dad found out, and he didn't respond the way that would have been a protective way. He kind of lashed out at me, didn't, sent the man home. And at that point, when I should have been like scooped up into arms
Hmm.
and said, "It's okay, you're just a baby. This was a grown man. He should have known better." I was kind of made to feel like it was my fault. And I mean, you're 11. I mean, I have an 11-year-old. They're like completely clueless. And so my mom took us to the church, and we confronted the head pastor. And the youth pastor had gone to the head pastor and kind of wove this story to everybody that would listen, how he was the victim and that I had seduced him, which is absolutely, I mean, it just, that's
First of all,
impossible. I didn't
how
think
old
in my
was this
memory.
man? How he was a man, you're saying?
He was a man. He was 19 or 20.
And you were
And,
11 years old.
so
You were 11.
I was
Oh
11,
my
and
God.
I'm no, I had no experience. I wasn't sexually, I did, I was a baby. I was watching Muppet Babies. Like, this is not somebody that knew things about sexual things, or even, thought that way. And so when I'm sitting in the chair at this church and listening to this pastor tell me how it's my fault that this happened. So on top of my dad telling, kind of having the wrong response when it was discovered, but this pastor situation was also confirming it's your fault. You did it. You're the woman. You're the slut. It's all in you. And so I was horrified. I remember walking out of the church in the breezeway, and my mom says, "Why don't we go to the police?" And I said, "Mom, please, I cannot do this anymore. I just want to hide it. I just, let's not, please, please, please." And I, like, with tears, just, begging her not to go to the police. And she said, "Okay, we're just going to drop it. It's fine." And she was very sympathetic to me, very loving towards me. But, I mean, she's had never had that happen. She didn't know what that was like. And so looking back, I wish we would have gone to the police, but I don't fault her at all for that situation, because when come down the line, I was actually found out that he was working as a coach at a school in the Houston area and was arrested for doing the exact same thing to the girls on the volleyball team that he was coaching. And so because it wasn't his second conviction, it was his first conviction because I didn't go to the police. Then again, I felt extreme shame for not, like, it's my fault. It's my fault that he's not in jail where he belongs because I didn't come forward at that point. And so, just all that just coming down on me, feeling so much shame and guilt and, just and it's so confusing because you're like, well, I mean, maybe I did, maybe it was my fault, And so you go into this like kind of rabbit hole in your mind, and then you're feeling, like you said, bulimia and all this it's just a coping mechanism. It's just a band-aid to help you feel better about the situation. And we know so much now about dopamine and how things are triggered. There's that constant like my dopamine's low. I'm gonna beef it up by scrolling. Binging and purging is another way to get dopamine. I mean, there's tons of ways that we're constantly like little rats just trying to get these dopamine rushes. And I, because of what happened, my dopamine levels and my levels were just, all the way off. And
Can
and
I
I think
just
there's
say
also a
one
spiritual.
thing? Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, but number
Oh, go
one,
ahead.
I just want to say how very, very sorry I am. Like, I'm a mom too. I have little girls. I have a 12-year-old, almost 13. I cannot imagine what that was like for you in your little 11-year-old body, not understanding sexuality, number one, not being groomed, but then going to the head pastor and being gaslit like that. I mean, it's like all these layers of betrayal. I don't know what your relationship is with your dad today. I don't know if it was like his intention. Maybe it was misunderstanding, not understanding how to cope, the pain of feeling like he probably couldn't help or his hands were tied. I don't know what that would have been like, but my heart is broken because thinking about it, like that you were asking for help and going for help from a figure in your church and being told it was your fault, it just breaks my heart, and it makes me really, really angry more than anything else,
Yeah,
because this is common.
absolutely.
This is common,
Yeah,
sadly.
absolutely. And so from that point in my life, I, I became bulimic, to kind of cope with the
Mhm.
sexual abuse,
Mhm.
and got dangerously thin. And but then on top of that, there's a place where it's never enough. That hole inside of us is never enough. It's never filled enough. And so then I added on cigarettes, and then alcohol, and then drugs, and I just kept leveling up. And it's like it just is like that. Like if we're gonna level up, we're like kind of geared that way to level up. And if we're gonna level up, whether it be good or bad, mine was just on the wrong track. And so I was selling drugs, and then moved to, but all the while, graduated as a National Honor Society student, and graduated in 3 years, because I really wanted to get out of the house and live on my own. And so no one could kind of figure out, like, I mean, here's this girl, we can tell something is wrong. And we know, all my friends knew all the things about me, but I'm functioning at this really, really high level, making straight A's, and doing all the things, being on, writing for newspapers and going, just doing all the things. And so when I moved to Austin is when it really kind of took even a darker turn. And I was, I found the baddies to hang out with, and they introduced me to heroin and needles. And so I was shooting up heroin, I was shooting up cocaine, I was, mixing them together. And
How
it
old
got
were
it got
you?
really, really.
How old were you at this point?
I was 18 by this time, and I, you know, so right when I was almost 19, I think I had just turned 19, is when I kind of had this sense something is changed, like something is going to happen. Like I had this like a premonition
Mhm.
that something is going to happen, and it's going to be big, and it's going to change my life. And I actually wrote a diary entry about it. And after I wrote this diary entry, I popped a hit of X, got in my car, drove around, and I was a writer, and I've always been a writer. And I thought, well, I'm going to go get a Bible because I'm writing a book that's kind of apocalyptic, and I need to do research because that's what good writers do.
Mhm.
And I don't have a Bible. And so I went into this little small church, and I was dressed like the bride of Satan. I had this black leather corset on, this big black tutu. I had a black veil on, blood red lipstick, and walked in and scared the bejesus out of these two tiny little women and demanded a Bible. And they went in the back, and I'm assuming they were scared of me and prayed and didn't want to be left alone with me. And when I was in that church, I had this desire to go into the chapel. And so I kind of shook the chapel doors. And when I did that, they were locked. And I thought, that's blasphemous. Like, who locks the church? Like, this is like the place where we're all supposed to be able to go into.
Yeah.
And I walked, when they came back, I asked them if I could go pray in the chapel. And they said, well, okay. And, you know, they opened the door. And I walked in. And when I walked in, I saw the crucifix of Jesus. And at that moment, I just knew I was home. I knew everything that I had been searching for, all the drugs, all the sex, all the whatever that I had been putting in this hole wasn't working. And that was. And so that's just kind of where everything changed. And my life has just, from then, I had some bumps and bruises. I had to get over my eating disorder, had to go to eating disorder therapy, had just miracle upon miracle. But after the one thing that did immediately drop from my life was the addiction to heroin, and which from over and over, I've heard police officers and just say that just doesn't happen.
Yeah, I'm shocked to
but
hear
the other
that.
things I had to struggle.
Yeah, I'm shocked to hear that, because usually when you're doing heroin, you can't get off of it. It's very. Yeah. So do you think that's
I didn't even at the time realize how amazing it was.
I was just wondering, that's got to be some kind of like weird divine intervention or something.
It absolutely was, because I didn't realize how big of a deal it was until, later on. But when you have the answer that you're looking for, like they talk about the fake dollar bills, like bankers always are dealing with real money. And so when they see a counterfeit, they know it's a counterfeit. But I had been like looking for that real money the whole time. And when you realize, you're just like, you take that counterfeit and you just throw it away. Like it's, you don't even want it. It had no place anymore. And I did have to struggle through and like give up cigarettes. And that was probably really hard, give up, marijuana and stuff that was like a little bit like softer. But it was still not, relatively easy, because I had the answer to my question.
But how long were you actually using? You were using cocaine, heroin, ecstasy. How long of a period were you using?
So I graduated high school when I was 17. I graduated in 3 years, and immediately went on a backpacking trip to Europe, where it just, my drug use and my alcohol use just increased probably tenfold. It was already insane, but it was, and then I probably pretty soon after that, when I went to Austin, met some people, and we just anything we could get our hands on too. So probably a good 2 years.
Wow.
Or, at least with heroin, probably a good year. So probably before that, it was just cocaine. And then we added heroin on later on.
You're so lucky that that doesn't happen. That does not happen. So that's a miracle. I believe in miracles. That's definitely a miracle. So tell me what it was like once you kind of had that realization and got your life back. What happened then? You're a mother of 7 kids. So that in itself is a book that I'm ready to read, because I can't even take care of 2.
2 is hard. 2. When I'm left home with the 2 babies, I don't know how to handle it. It's big. It's like having a school group or some sort of, they kind of work as a pack when there's so many of them. When there's 2 of them, they're just rogue agents everywhere.
Yeah.
So, but after that, so I just dove into reading the Word and going to church and surrounding myself with people who were, looking to improve themselves, not just spiritually, but also like build businesses and have amazing relationships with their parents and go to therapy and work through all the stuff that, had happened, trauma in their past. And so I went through therapy. And then I met my husband at church, and we I didn't think he was the, like the bee's knees at the beginning. But at some point he became my total knight in shining armor, and I am so lucky to have him. And then we got pregnant, and just we got married, and then we had our first baby, and we just for 14 years I was pregnant or nursing straight for 14 years.
Oh my gosh.
And so yeah, it's been a wild ride. And some of that it's not all roses after that, because of, like I said, I came from a very well-to-do family, and actually my father was a millionaire. And I at least in business, and we had it in the house, but it was like he won a lawsuit, became a millionaire. And did I say billionaire? I didn't mean to say billionaire. Millionaire.
Mm-hmm.
Won a huge lawsuit, but it didn't click that we were as rich as we were, because we didn't live like Kim Kardashian lifestyle. We were in a small town. We did have a big house in the small town, but it's still a small town. And when I got married, I married somebody whose mom had always been on welfare. When she was pregnant with her 5 boys, they slept in the bottom drawer of their dresser. When it rained, the rain leaked on the bed in her bedroom, and so they had to go run up and put a tarp over the hole in the roof. And so those two type of lifestyles and understanding of like how money works colliding was really kind of just a place in my life that, like, I'm thankful now that it happened, like a collision that happened, because I don't think I would have understood the other side of poverty. My dad told me, dream big, work hard, and everything will happen. The American dream. His dad told him, crap in one hand and dream in the other, and see which one fills up first, which is a horrible thing to tell a child. Basically, don't dream. It's not worth it. Nothing ever comes good of it. Money is the root, all evil.
Yeah.
And so we spent a huge portion of our adult life while having children on welfare and government assistance, and which I realize now that was just an amazing, really amazing that our system, as much as people, throw shade on the government, like the fact that we have these programs available for people that need them we live in such a great society that has a great infrastructure, and with all of its woes and ills, it does have some really, really good positive benefits. So we were able to have all these babies and not go into extreme amounts of debt. We were able to put food on the table. But it was very shameful because, as somebody who was taught to work really, really hard, I'm here busting my butt and getting college degrees and, holding down jobs. And it just doesn't seem to be, I can't get a leg up. And I was at the place, like, it was a long time ago. It's about, my daughter is 8, almost 19. So about 19 years ago, it's a time when you had food stamps or WIC was like these coupon cards that were like long, like you like flick them out like a scroll.
Yeah.
And it was so shameful to have to pull those out. And
well, I can't
now they have, like,
imagine
a nice little...
what it would be like. And sorry to talk over you, to come from
No, go ahead.
Come from an affluent background and then to be in those shoes. That in itself would be really, really difficult, really hard.
Yeah.
And to be a mother and have all those kids. Yeah. So you were pulling out the cards, and what happened?
Well, there are some times that, we always tried to get off, government assistance, and we're just trying really, really hard all the time. But I remember standing in line. I was 7 months pregnant with baby number 4. And I had gone to the HEB at the wrong day. Like, so your government assistance, your food stamps, your WIC comes like on the 1st, and my food stamps, because of my last name, came on the 6th. But like, I was at the wrong day for both of them, I guess. I don't know how, maybe, yeah. So it was on the wrong day and I couldn't get either of them. And I stood in line and I had been, when you're pregnant, I was 7 months pregnant. I had 3 kids that I'm going through the grocery store, picking out all the items for, an hour and a half, because you're dealing with meltdowns and tantrums and you're putting stuff and then to get to the checkout line and not have the ability to take any of this food that you've, spent a lot of time picking out.
Mm-hmm.
And I stood in the grocery line and the lady looks at me and she says, "Don't you and your husband have jobs?" And I just thought, that's it. Just bawling. And I'm just like, I'm so embarrassed. I'm so, ashamed. And the fact that she said it is just horrible. I know. And I know she shouldn't have said it. She was, she wasn't super young, but she was young enough that was like, maybe she was truly curious. But I'm like, not only do we both have jobs, we have college degrees. Like there's no reason we shouldn't have enough money to pay for this. And so it was a really bad point and a really low point in our marriage. And then at some point we did continue to my husband, he's a videographer. I was a graphic designer, web designer. But when you're having so many kids, at some point, daycare costs more than, what your salary is.
Yeah.
And so I came home and he was working. And then at some point he kind of got to a place where we were able to breathe-ish. And that's kind of, and I, at that point when I was at home, I was blogging and doing all this stuff, and I had kind of turned off that blog. And then I started selling or picking up furniture to pay. We had accumulated some debt from going on a vacation. I started picking up furniture on the side of the road and started paying off this debt that we had accumulated. And within 6 months, we paid it all off, just picking up Sterilite containers, igloo coolers, the occasional bike. A lot of people put like those fake trees on the side of the road, and I would just sell them $20 or something like that, and just slowly started, etching away at that debt. And it was around then I realized, wow, we could, this is really, we could do this. And then my husband had been hired at a job that was really looking positive, this is it. We're going to be finally out of a place where we can really just do what we've been wanting to do the whole time, was pay our own way. And then the pandemic happened. But little did I know, it was a blessing in disguise, because as I'm picking up furniture on the side of the road and really saving things from the landfill, because sometimes I was going right before a trash truck came, and I started when everybody was feeling the financial insecurity, job insecurity during COVID, that was when we were just making tons of money, because people were redoing their houses. There was no Goodwill open to donate your stuff, so they'd throw it on the side of the road. People were all in their houses, so they didn't see it. And then I was just taking it and staging it on, a small wall next to my front door. And then I was cleaning it up and putting it on my porch for contactless pickup. Venmo took off. Facebook Marketplace was a big thing. At that point, it was starting to be even more of a big thing than it is now, and or than it was. And that whole situation kind of changed our financial trajectory. And so after COVID happened, we decided to kind of pivot into vintage furniture. And now we started a e-commerce. In 2022, we opened up an e-commerce store online called curbvulture.com. And within the first year of e-commerce, we cleared $100,000 of sales.
Oh my
gosh. So
gosh.
we are in a whole different, all of the things that I've gone through to say, we're just in a whole different place.
And, let me ask you something. I hope you don't take offense to this at all, but I do want to ask you, because I'm thinking back to your story of the checking out of the grocery store. People do tend to make assumptions, right? In general, you never know what somebody's going through in their life to make them behave a certain way, act a certain way. When you were in that line, and you said at the time you had 4 kids, am I wrong on that?
I was pregnant with the fourth baby.
You were
yeah.
pregnant. Okay, so were people like why do you keep having babies? Like why do you keep like I'm just wondering like because people can be
Yeah,
so
I mean, no,
so
not offended at all.
yeah, go
Yeah,
ahead.
not offended at all. If if they thought it, they never said it,
Okay.
but I was thinking it. Like we didn't plan to have as many kids as we did. I
Yeah.
mean, we were trying to prevent actively. And so we were just like, well, crap. I mean, here we go again. And so, yeah, absolutely. I mean, they may have not, people may have thought it, but I definitely thought it. Like, if we could just not be pregnant again, like maybe we wouldn't be in this situation. This is I mean, there's so many times like I did this. I shouldn't have done this. Why did I do that? That was so stupid. If I would just be smarter with my money, if I would just save more, if I had, but there's so much that goes into like a poverty mindset that me and my husband together were fighting, not actually fighting, but like combating his mentality towards money and my mentality, my knowledge that like saving and spending and I mean I had a budget when I was single that I was very strict with. I didn't have any debt, but I walked into a marriage that had debt and had student loans, and it was me trying to figure out, him feeling ashamed for it, and him kind of sticking his head in the sand when it came to money, and me having to be like, come on, like we got to do this together. He was the first to graduate college in his family. His dad was a heroin addict, died of hepatitis C. So like his whole background was so much different than my background. And so I had a lot of grace for him, but it was also like when you're on the outside looking in, you're like, well, why would you just not do XYZ? And it was like, we did XYZ, and it wasn't enough because there were some mentalities and emotional hangups that we had to get through. And my husband,
also you're
like,
entitled.
right
You're entitled to your beliefs, and my mother and father also believed in this is back in the day in the rhythm method, and my mom sadly lost multiple children. I would be technically one of 8. And I did lose a sister as a little girl. So but their situation was different. Like my father was an orthodontist. They had the means, and thankfully
right.
in my life I've never had to worry to that extent about money. But I had to ask that because I'm trying to listen as a listener myself. And I think
Yeah,
it's important
absolutely.
if my listeners are sitting here listening to this and going, well, why didn't that happen? Or why didn't we're all given the ability to make our own decisions in life, and we all need to
Right.
respect what each other thinks is right to do in life. So some people
Yeah,
believe
I mean, and it's
yeah,
never a straight line. I mean, if
no,
I mean, we weren't using a rhythm method. We were using tried and true
yeah,
preventative measures.
yeah,
But also, I mean, I had the thought like, well, I mean, if I didn't homeschool, I could go get a job and I could make more money. Like there was so much, and then so then you're compounding that. Like now, my decision that I feel like is what I believe in is I feel ashamed of my own decision. And so it's just, trying to, work through that and being like, this is just like, we're all trying to do the best we know how.
yeah.
And not all of us have been given the same tools that other people have been given. And so, right before, it's funny because I mean, it literally happened within months of each other. Right before we really started taking off with the vintage furniture business, my husband had this deep revelation that he that took away the shame of how he had been raised and the way he viewed money, because he just basically thought, well, like we're just destined to be poor. And there was like a moment where his mindset changed, and he said, that's not true. Like God will take care of us. We will be allowed, all the things that are meant for us will come to us, and being okay. And I really think that there was some sort of spiritual barrier that needed to be broken in order to get to the other side. And I don't think people talk about that a lot. I think they think, oh, well, if you just do the right things, A plus B equals C. without, when it's like a physical manifestation of only physical manifestation of action, instead of realizing there's this and there's this that all have to align and for the things to happen in the way that they're supposed to happen in your life.
100%. I believe in manifesting everything on a daily basis. I mean, I'm an example of somebody that worked in corporate America for 15 years of my life, left in COVID, and started over in my 40s. And I think we all have the
It's
ability.
the best time to start over in your
Yeah,
40s.
your
The
40s
best
are
time to
when
start over.
that's just when it starts. Everything starts, right? But I really find it's so important, even if we don't believe believe in the same things in life, right? I think it's so important to respect what people go through in life and not be so judgmental of others. I mean, this is
Yeah.
your life. We're all given. Elaine was given a life as a little girl, and she's had really hard things she's had to go through. And then look at what you've done. I mean, that is pretty freaking fantastic to be somebody that's like, I'm going to like pull over on the side of the road with my 7 kids in the car or wherever they're spread out. And I'm going to go get a piece of furniture. I'm going to redo the furniture and then I'm going to sell it. I mean, do you ever really honestly think to yourself, like, wow, I'm kind of a badass? I hope you do. I hope you think that about
Uh,
yourself.
my daughter is like, "You're so cool," and it's like, just realizing that you're given one life,
Mm-hmm.
like, just live it, like, be all the things you want to be, and it's hard. I mean, there's no part in my brain that turns off that says you're stupid, you don't know how to do anything, you're such a poser. Like, I have to constantly push past that
Mm-hmm.
and just know, like no one knows that you don't know. Like, just keep going.
Fake it till you
uh
make it, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. We're all, I mean, we've all, this is like my there's always like the first child, there's that your guinea pig child, like your whole life is a guinea pig life. Like every moment that's new is new to you. And it's like we're all just trying to figure it out here. And so I totally agree. Like honoring the fact that somebody has made decisions for their life based on what they know and what tools they've been given, and being really careful to, if I mean, if we think that they're in a place where they shouldn't be, like if they're doing drugs or doing something like that, being like realizing those are coping mechanisms. Let's make sure that we are not attacking the coping, because there's something deeper that needs to be addressed if they're doing something that's harmful for them. And so, but always knowing that, like, just always coming at everybody and everything without any judgment, and just knowing that we're all here trying to help each other, and see blind spots that we all don't have, but always just being so careful to honor the fact that they've all been through stuff, and that's the reason why they're making the decisions they're making.
It is so true. I have a good friend that I actually had on the podcast, and I met her randomly through Nextdoor, believe it or not. And she posted this thing about her brother, Ryan, who was bipolar and homeless. And I really, before I met Maeve, I never really kind of understood the homeless crisis. It just bothered me. I was really offended by the fact, and I'm honest about this, that these people are on the street sitting in their own stool, not wanting to get off the streets. I live in Los Angeles. The crisis is growing by the day, but then you never really take yourself out of the picture to go, well, this is somebody's son, this is somebody's daughter, this is somebody's brother, this is somebody's sister. What happened to them to get them to the point that they choose, instead of going to a warm bed, because many of them have that option, or not many, but some, to sit out in the streets and choose drugs over going into a place where they might have a bed for the night. That's
Yeah.
called living in hell. It's called like mental illness. It's called drug addiction. It's called all the things that it is. But we always have to remember, and I have to remind myself of this constantly, that we are all here just trying to get through life, and we're human. And no matter how much money you have or what you have in this life, it doesn't matter if you're a piece of poo. and you're not a kind person. And I was not going to say poo. I was going to say something worse than that, and I didn't say it. So there you go, Elaine. Um, I want to ask you, for the sake of time, because I could talk to you for a really long time. What? So now you have this business. P.S. You remind me of Blake Lively. I don't know. Head over to YouTube, everybody. All of my 5 people that actually watch on YouTube. What do people like? Do people tell you look like Blake Lively, or that's just a side note? I have ADD.
I'm drawing I'm sure I would see her
She's
face and be
married
like,
to
oh yeah.
Ryan Reynolds. Elaine's very pretty, ladies and gentlemen. And if you do go on YouTube and watch this, just know that I am not looking my best. I'm going to say that. I did not put on makeup, but Elaine did. But I want to I want to know where you are today. I want to know, you're running for Mrs. Texas. Like, how does that happen?
Yeah, that's a long story. But I want to say I actually posted a TikTok or an Instagram reel where I'm like, it's like a transition where you do the makeup, and I like, my kids are like, you look like Jeffrey Dahmer at the beginning. Like, I look like
Jeffrey Dahmer right now.
What is, like, you had to look the saddest you did, and then I'm like, and then it's like,
I think I saw this because I just started following you on Instagram. Did you post it on Instagram too?
I did post it on Instagram too. So yeah, so it's like, it is amazing what paint can do to you.
Thank God we're women and we can have the ability. Well, some men use the paint too, but I do agree.
Absolutely.
We're very lucky that we can go out, and red lipstick makes a huge difference in life. If you can wear red lipstick,
it does,
right?
I can tell you. Just
okay, so
let some lipstick. Yeah,
let me hear about Mrs. Texas, because that is a whole separate thing, and so cool, by the way.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm a ex roller derby girl, and as you know, like ex heroin addict. So being in a pageant isn't really something that I was like, it was on my radar. And some things had happened. I had been blogging and speaking and writing and doing all these things, but right before 2020, I kind of cut that off because it just wasn't, it wasn't what I wanted. It wasn't making enough money, honestly. And I, kind of laid that down. And so there's some things happened that made me think, oh, well, like maybe I'll get back into speaking again. And I went to a women's conference, and Mrs. America was speaking at, not the current not the current title holder, but like maybe in the 90s she won or something. Sweet little testimony. She's talking about how, like, God showed her that he wanted her to run, and like she paid for her, first her bachelor's, and then she ran and she won like Mrs. Georgia, and then she ran again, and she ran as Mrs. Georgia in the Mrs. America contest, and she paid for the rest of her grad school through that. And I was like, but what struck me was that she said, I wanted to share my message with the world, and when I won this title, I started going to school groups and talking as Miss America in an auditorium. She's like, I was able to share my faith. You're not allowed to share your faith unless you're in a school auditorium as Mrs. America. And I was like, oh, I kind of like that idea, like that I can just share my story and my testimony of redemption. And so that the kids in, high school or whatever, don't get into what I got into. If it could change one life, that's enough. And I got on the website. It was kind of like an older website, so it wasn't really working on my phone. And a week later, I went to a completely unrelated conference, and Mrs. Universe was speaking. And I thought, that's weird. And she said the same thing. She works with women who were in the foster care system and are now out, and they help, try to transition the women so they can be moms, the good moms they want to be, because they didn't have those examples. So she kind of helps them work through some of their trauma and stuff like that, so they can be better moms. But she said the same thing. She said, I was saying all this stuff before I won the Mrs. Universe title. She said, but when I won this title, people started listening. They started asking me on podcasts. They started asking me to show up at events and talk. And so now she can do what she's always wanted to do, which was to facilitate people who've been in the foster care system to be better moms and be better parents. But now she can do it on a grand scale.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what really like led me to this place. Like I was like, I mean, it's nice to be like, it's a pageant. It's about beauty and stuff like that. But it's like, there's so much more. It's like, I want to make an impact with my story, and I want people to be set free and know that freedom is possible. And the only way, the better way you can do it is if you reach more people and you're talking to a bigger audience. And, I'm always about efficiency. What's the fast track? If I make it to Mrs. Texas, if I run for Mrs. Texas and I win, and then I go on to Mrs. America, that's the fast track. That's the way to get people to listen. And so that's why I signed up. And I want to encourage women, and everybody to just live the life that they were supposed to have, because I think that there's so many people that are, their own insecurity and everything is holding them back. And we have everybody was created on purpose for a purpose. And so that's why I decided to run. And I got, I'm one of 50 in the Texas area of Texas women that was chosen to run. And so I got the message about a month ago that I was chosen. And then I got my sash in. So now I've got to go do like media appearances and take photos of my, doing things, and hire a pageant coach and do all these things that I did not know was part of it. I've never done this before. And I talked to a pageant coach and I was like, I don't think I would have signed up had I known what.
No,
what
I'm like so excited for this. And P.S., I need to tell you, I'm running for Mrs. California. I'm joking. I'm not. Can you imagine? Like I would come in last. I would be in last place because I would not be able to do any of the things. But on a serious note, I love that you are saying all the things that you're saying, because it is so true. Like you have this story and you have the ability to be I watched a brief piece of a speech you did, and then to use these tools and to listen to the signs. Like there aren't really meeting the Mrs. whatever she was, Mrs. Universe, and then Mrs. the other state within the same
Mrs. America, yeah.
Mrs. America within the same amount. That's not just a coincidence. Like there's a reason you're supposed to be doing this. So when is the actual pageant?
So the pageant is April 28th, 29th, and 30th. And so it's coming up probably sooner than I would like. And then I'm gathering sponsors, and I'm trying to figure out what to do, and walk in really, really high heels. I was told that if you walk in really, really high heels, it actually creates a better center of gravity. So, and I'm 5'3", so I will be walking in 5-inch heels.
You better start like walking in high heels all around your neighborhood with your 7 kids. Like that's your assignment for
I know.
me. I now prefer a cozy, like low-heeled shoe in my old age, but I cannot wait to cheer you on. That is so cool and so fantastic. And what if my audience hasn't learned anything today, it really is proof that you can be in life in the lowest place and feel like all of the cards are stacked against you. And my whole message for doing these episodes every week is to go on and to introduce you to people like Elaine. She's the epitome of like the guests that I look for, where all these cards are stacked against you and you don't give up and you keep going and you matter. And Elaine, you matter and you're awesome. And I can't wait to be like, I know Mrs. Texas. She is amazing, and I'm going to be rooting for you all the way from California. In closing,
I appreciate it. And I'm so excited to meet everybody on a podcast that I talk to, because as a blogger, as an ex-blogger, somebody who's like, I know how hard it is to do what you're doing and to start over at 40. Like that is commendable in itself, and so amazing that you're living how you were created. And that's, it's a testament to how trauma and all those bad things that happen in our life can push, it's beauty out of ashes.
100%. I love beauty out of ashes. That's my new term. I love it. Love it, love it, love it. In closing, everyone, thank you, Elaine. It was so nice to meet you. Like, I was dragging this morning, and when I get to be able to have the opportunity to like interview and meet people like you, it gives me and my life purpose, and I truly think that way, and I feel very, very fortunate and lucky to be able to do what I do. In closing, be happy by making other people happy, everyone.
Judging Meghan with Meghan Judge.